Yeah. Miss, I caught another baby newt. It's in my hand.
Hi everyone! In today's English lesson we're going to be carrying on with the work that we did yesterday and writing up the next 2 stages of the life cycle from the notes that we did last week up into newt. If you remember the checklist from last week's lesson about explanation texts, you'll remember that it's supposed to include quite a few key features. We've done a few of them so far. What I'd like you to do before we start the lesson is just have a little look through your work that we started on Friday, continuing with yesterday, just to check that it's got all of the features that it should have so far. You should have a title, an introduction, headings, technical words, explaining conjunctions such as so and because, and some time phrases. Have a look and see if you've got any of those things missing, and if you have, just try and add those in. But for today's lesson, you're going to need your work from Tuesday the 7th of July last week, where you were writing up the last 3 stages of the life cycle of a newt. In today's lesson, you're going to be writing about stage 3 and stage 4, but you're not going to be writing about stage 5 today. That will be done in tomorrow's lesson. I've done a little checklist just here to show everything that you're going to need to write about. So far we've written about the eggs, we've written about the larvae, and today we're going to start writing up our notes on the larvae with 4 limbs. Here's my notes on the larvae with 4 limbs. You can see just there, they're not in full sentences again. That's what we're going to be working on this session, and then you can do that with your own notes after the lesson. Remember, if there's any notes here that you'd really like to include as well, you can do that also, but you're going to need to do what I've done and still copy those into full sentences of your own. I've started this bit here with another heading, and my heading is larvae with 4 limbs. It's an appropriate heading because that's the stage that we're talking about. So the first bullet point that I took down about the larvae with 4 limbs was that it begins to feed on the tiny water insects in the pond. The larvae will begin to search for food. It feeds on the tiny water insects in the pond. My next bullet point. In about 10 days, the tadpole's front legs begin to come through. You can see here it's not a full sentence. I've missed capital letters and full stops, so that's all things that I'm going to need to work on now as I put this into my sentence. If you have a look down here, you can see I've started my sentence with unlike some other salamander species. In the video that we watched, I remembered that the man had spoken about the fact that some salamanders grow all their limbs at once. But something special about the newt species was that it grows its 4 limbs first before it gets its back legs. So my sentence says, unlike some other salamander species, newts don't grow their limbs at the same time. In about 10 days after hatching, the larvae will begin to develop its 4 limbs. My next bullet point just says lively creature, so I'm going to really need to build this up to make it sound better. I remembered that when we were watching the videos about the newts, the larvae with 4 limbs was darting around all over the pond. So I wanted to include this bit of detail into my explanation text. So I've said, at this stage, the larvae is a lively creature and can be seen swimming around, beginning to explore its underwater surroundings. My next bullet point, as it grows, its gills get larger. Can breathe beneath the water's surface. This is a really good opportunity for me to use a causal conjunction. Remember, causal conjunctions explain why or how something happens. So I'm going to use because or so to help explain. So I'm going to use because or so to help put this sentence together. Which one do you think works best? As it grows, its gills get larger. because it can breathe beneath the water's surface. Or, as it grows, its gills get larger, so it can breathe beneath the water's surface. So explains the so works perfectly in this sentence. Because it has bigger gills, it is able to breathe deep below the water's surface. So is the word that works in this sentence. Your independent task for today is to write up the next 2 stages of the life cycle of a newt. This is the larvae with forelimbs and the est stage. I've put my notes here in bullet points for you, so if you'd like to use any of these in your work, you are more than welcome to. Just please make sure that you put them into full sentences. I've put an example here of how I really like your work to be set out. You can see I put my headings in nice and neatly, and my work is set out underneath. I've left a little gap between the next heading and then my information is under there. This is going to be on stage 3 and 4. We're not writing about stage 5 today, that will be in tomorrow's lesson. If you would like to take any more notes before you start this lesson, I'm going to put some videos of newts in just after this finishes. But if you're happy with your notes, you can get started already. See you tomorrow.